All right. Good morning, everybody. You are up and at 'em this Thursday morning. Phumi Mashiko is in the studio in Johannesburg. I am in my studio, and we are cracking with a beautiful day ahead of us and lots of things to talk about. We've got the burning platform a little bit later on. Kanthan Pillay will be joining us, which he does. It's now almost like, what is it, a bi-weekly thing with Kanthan?
I don't know what it is that kind of changes for him that allows him to come and join us, but whatever it is, we like it.
We like it a lot. As always, the phone lines are open. We will give you that number in a moment. You can call us anytime you want. It is your show, so you get to decide what we talk about. We've got a couple of things we want to get off our chests, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. And in the burning platform a bit later, we'll also be joined by Helen Zillie, who we haven't spoken to in ages. Someone brought her up the other day and said, oh, well, we need to hear from Helen on this or that, or how come Helen's still in charge of the DA and all of this stuff. So we thought, well, let's ask her. She is still the chairperson of the Federal Council of the DA and the former executive mayor of Cape Town, of course. And then
And come the elections again on the 1st and 2nd of April, she will be standing one more time.
There we go. And you know what? It seems like the old people have it in this country. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of people in the cabinet who are younger than, I don't know, 55. Are there?
I think there's 3.
I mean, now that
Ronald Lamola,
now that Fikile is out because he's
Chabeni,
right. So it's like
and Stella Ndabeni.
Is Stella Ndabeni Abrams young still? Well, so at least there's 3. But the rest of the people in charge of this country are all in their 70s. Which is fine. I mean, you get some wise 70-year-olds and you get some old 70-year-olds. So it depends.
I think we got all the old 70-year-olds.
Oh my God! All right, listen. We also got Dr. Mark, who's going to be joining us today. Of course, Dr. Mark is the host of the T Clinic's T Health Show, and he runs the T Clinic. We're going to talk a little bit today about something I think is quite useful, especially for all of us as we get older. You know, he doesn't just deal with men at the T Clinic. They do all kinds of very interesting shows. And one of the things he wants to talk about is weight loss and weight management. You know, we all talk about our metabolisms. And if there's anything that has gotten more difficult as I've got older, it's maintaining weight. I've been okay at it. But there have been some pictures I've seen of myself because, of course, now the ubiquitous cell phone camera is everywhere. You see some pictures of yourself and you're like, oh, Jesus, look at that double chin. Mm-hmm.
This waddle area here.
Right. Yeah. So we'll ask Dr. Mark about that.
It's the waddle area and the middle area.
The middle area.
You can't see my middle area. It's a bit wobbly.
The what do they call them? The love handles or the the overhang, the muffin tops. You can call them whatever you like.
But just that middle area. That middle.
So how are you, Pums?
Baby, I'm good. You know, it feels like it's been a long week because we had a wobbly in the first part of the week. So it's weird. I hate these long weekends that like start on a Monday and Tuesday because then you don't know. Is Wednesday Monday? Is it not? I saw one of my friends, actually posted on her Facebook yesterday morning saying Happy Monday all. And I was like, bye.
It's very confusing. I mean, I hate to bang on the old drum again, and you know, our audience love giving me shit here, but I don't know why they don't just put whichever is the closest day to the public holiday. Just give us that Friday every time there is one.
A friend of mine was telling me about some countries in Europe that do that just have these commemorative days aren't on a date. They're on the first Monday of March, no matter what the date is, or the 3rd or whatever. You know, it's a set day and not necessarily a set date. And so it's always orderly.
Well, you know, it just seems sensible to me. And of course, our government is not sensible, so we can't expect too much from them, but it would just clean things up a little bit. Those Tuesday public holidays, and, it's just such a dumb waste of time. We were at work on Monday. I mean, we did our show on Monday morning, and a lot of people went to work business as usual. I have to give you credit. You said it was going to be a nothing, and it was a nothing. So congrats to you again. Pumi's predictive powers come through strong.
my office is in Rosebank. So we were at the office and I went for a walk in the mall and it was like a Saturday. Like the shops were open, people were walking around the mall. Like, except
Yeah.
Monday was also the watershed day, isn't it, for South Africa's kind of how far can fake news be here in South Africa?
Oh,
We
God.
thought we'd reached the pinnacle with the day couplets, right? But no.
No,
No.
there was a lot of fake news going around on Monday, and
Yo.
it just okay. This blows my mind, and I spoke about this very briefly on Monday. But my mother sent me a thing on Friday last week, like, oh, there are these burning tires on this road. Now, I mean, she didn't know any better than I did, but I forwarded it to a friend of mine who lives in Midrand. I was like, just be careful, this might be near you. So he WhatsApps me immediately afterwards. He's like, fake news. I was just on that road. There's nothing going on there. These pictures are from the riots of 22. So I was like, oh God, how embarrassing. So I said to my mom, like, why are you sending me fake news? And she didn't know.
Why would she know you?
No, but here's the problem, right? At the beginning of that chain, there is a fucking idiot who makes that stuff up knowing that it's nonsense. That person is the problem. I mean, obviously, everybody else, they're just doing it out of concern. I mean, I don't think anyone is passing this stuff on because they want to cause drama. I think if you know
No.
it's fake, you don't share it, right? I mean, that's
If you can see it's fake, you know,
sure.
but some things, and like this is the thing about any lie, it just needs a grain of truth.
Correct.
Just a grain of truth, and then it throws everybody off, like the plausibility of it. But I think Monday we woke up. So first it was all the story about the tires being confiscated all over, right?
Mm,
All the tires
yes.
that are being placed ready for burning on the Monday. And I was like,
And wasn't it, it was Becky Taylor who said, we have confiscated 24,500 tires. And he said,
so
most
that
of
was,
them
I think that was
in the
yesterday.
Eastern Cape. And he said, most of them in the Eastern, don't know what's going on there, but the Eastern Cape, most of them.
I think he said that yesterday, but the first time I saw the confiscated tires was coming out of the Western Cape, was coming out of Cape Town, actually. The first time I saw the news about confiscated tires. And then Dlantla Lux also
Yes.
tweeting about
News.
also tweeting about confiscated tires. And that's like the numbers were, I was saying to somebody in my car, actually, we were driving, that in my car, and I have a little kind of SUV car, I couldn't fit the tires that are on my car inside my car. So, like, to confiscate 20,000 tires, my goodness, what are you driving around in?
Well, I mean, yeah, we also spoke about this a little bit. Why have we got so many tires lying around? Like, I know this is a thing. I remember from the days of, the protests in the 70s and 80s, that burning tires was like a thing because they're flammable, they're easy to find, they can cause an enormous amount of smoke. So it's a noisy, busy,
Well,
burny, shitty thing. And of course, people used to be necklaced, so it's become a symbol of some of that stuff. But like, I don't know anywhere else in the world where tires are specifically as much of a protest symbol as they are here. Or
so
am I
you
wrong?
know what I wondered about in the township, well, certainly in my township in Soweto, there are quite a lot of small businesses that are situated on the side of the road in strategic places around the township that sell retreaded tires, right?
Hmm.
So and I wondered if it's not those people too. And because what they have is they'll have like a stack of tires and they're on main roads and they're like off the side of the road. It's not like in a shack or in that kind of thing. So I wondered if those people became victims of this as well. Because what
Yeah.
do they have? What do they have to say that this is my little business? They don't have it's an informal business. They don't have some kind of paperwork that says,
Sure.
no, these tires are for sale or whatever. So I wondered about that.
Well, Mapelo says quite rightly, Julius would disagree with you. The country was shut down in his head because South Africans listened to him. I mean, this is the other thing, right? Is that you could see that generally across the country, the protests were very, very small. There was a reasonable sized march in Pretoria. There were a few people in Cape Town. There were a few people in Joburg, a few people in Durban, but it wasn't big. It wasn't on a scale that they would have. I mean, in all seriousness, I think they were very much hoping for a big impact. They were hoping for a really big statement. And there's no way you can argue that happened.
Well, this is a conversation happening in lots of places this week now after Monday, right? What has been achieved? I mean, yesterday at the vote of no confidence, Julius stood up in City Hall to say that he's got everybody by the scrotum. Did you not see that?
No. Jesus. That's
This was
fantastic.
his big. This was his big speech. This was his big speech. That is, I'm in charge. I've got you all by the scrotum, um, and that whether you are the black opposition parties or you are the white opposition party, whether you are the ruling party, he's in charge. He's in charge. And when he said the country must shut down, the country shut down. He got people out in the streets. So, I mean, but it's important to kind of understand what do you think he wanted to achieve? And did he achieve that? I mean, we're talking about him for the past 2 weeks.
Well,
Everybody's been talking about Julius and they are shut down. The DA went to court to try and, I don't know, stop them or enforce the. You know what I'm saying? Like Fikile Mbalula called a press conference yesterday about them. And so what did he achieve? I think he achieved what he set out to achieve.
No,
I don't think he set out to achieve. I don't think he necessarily. So it would have been a big win if he'd achieved a big shutdown and everybody stayed home or whatever. But he has won because, one, he has proven that he can command the media and get everybody talking around what he wants. I think, secondly, what he wanted to do was he wanted to show that he can mobilize around, because think about it, what is he, why is he doing this? He's a 10% party. And so what he's wanting to show is the muscle that as a 10% party, he's a good, if he's looking at the ANC, and this is what everybody's been talking about, his strategy, is he saying, look at the numbers I can still pull, not just in Pretoria, but all over the country. I am a good partner for you to get a majority. If you fall below 50%, I am the partner that you want to be able to.
All right. But it's easy to get people to talk about you. And we've seen, I mean, you even brought up the fake news in Nhlanhla Lux. Look at how he gets people to talk about him. And commanding the media is hardly, you don't need to be some evil Bond, villain with a cat on your lap and a fortune of billions to be able to command the media. All you have to do is say, look over there, and then point to someone who's on fire or something. And then the media will immediately shift all their cameras and attention to that. Also, social media has been proven to be completely useless because if anything, what I feel like Monday showed is that most of what you read on Twitter is not what's really going on in people's worlds. And in this country, Twitter is a tiny, tiny sliver of what's actually happened. If you were on Twitter, you'd think, oh my God, the country has come to a standstill. Everybody's talking about this is all anyone can talk about. It's just not true. The numbers, actions do speak louder than words. And I think people believe what they see. And seeing these tiny little groups of EFF people, which you could count on one hand in some places. It just made them look kind of sad. Really?
I think he achieved what he set out to achieve. International media was looking at him. Everybody is, and this is what you want. So he has now effectively launched his road to 2024. And what remains to be seen is whether he can convert that into votes. But if he's looking to make himself look attractive to the ANC as a partner going into a coalition government that everybody is talking about, he's also achieved that.
All right. Well, then I suppose, maybe if that's all if you want attention, if that is if that's the baseline for considering something successful, well then, yeah, fine, he can have it. Success. All right. Well, a few things that we want to get into before we start properly into the politics a little bit later on in the Burning Platform. You wanted to just talk about the joy of supporting small businesses.
Do you see my gray hair? Do you see my green hair?
Yes, green, not gray.
Green. I did think about gray. But the green one.
We're not going to talk about green hair. We'll talk about gray hair.
You all know this. I am a big fan of supporting local business. And on Sunday, my little niece set up a hair appointment for me at this amazing salon. And when I was there, I was just reminded about how absolutely amazing South Africans are, and tenacious and really out to in the hair salon. I also spoke to them about in Soweto, in Pimville. That's where the hair salon is. I spoke to them about the shutdown. We spoke about the shutdown. It was busy. It was a Sunday. People are busy. Sunday is a big hair day because you're getting ready for the week ahead. And none of them were talking about the shutdown. They were all just, getting ready for a week, going to work. The lady that owns the hair salon was very vibrant, very vibrant and vibey, and very excited about the week. Also kind of going, I'm not going. And she said something very funny, that most of the people that are going to show up for the protest are showing up for the meat. Like, because, one of the things that the AFF used to do, like when they have stadiums or whatever, they would slaughter and they'd have big, like a big bride, basically. It's just like they'll be going there for the meat. So I don't know if they had meat this past Monday. But it's so nice, guys. It's so nice. And I hope more people, if you can find a small local business to support, do it, because it's so fantastic to be with the person that is actually making it happen, and how hopeful they are. So we also see a lot of like the negative stuff, all of the crappy stuff. We're looking at the indicators. Yesterday, everybody's talking about food inflation, all of that kind of stuff. But in the, away from the cameras, there are some amazing people doing some amazing things. And so it was very exciting for me to get and she had lots of different kind of like hair fiber, like pink and gray and green and yellow and blonde.
Amazing.
Very amazing, very cool. And it just reminded me how much fun it actually is to support one small business, because it makes a very big difference to that one person's life. It's very cool.
Well, Rachel says you look very pretty, Phumi, but with that color hair, you should probably be asked your pronouns before we get into any trouble.
Listen, I had a presentation in a big blue chip company yesterday, and I could tell that they were a little bit not sure. They weren't sure about the substance of what's coming their way, but yeah, it was a great presentation. But the green hair definitely does that. It's cool, man. Green hair.
Well, I mean, it's certainly like it definitely makes you look very trendy and young and with
and everybody. I mean, in the hood, a lot of people call me Dimamzo because I'm in that age group.
Right.
So even the hairdresser was a little bit like, "Oh, sure, Dimamzo," because
just double checking. Yeah.
It's the crash kids that have the the green and the purple and the pink hair. It's like, yeah, I'm sure. Like, usebenza phi Dimamzo? Like at work, are they gonna like
Are they gonna approve of this? And you're like, no, I run my own business, so I think I'll be okay.
I was like, that's the joy of being the mamzo. People are generally, you do what you want.
So speaking of these things which are plaguing us, like the fact that you get older every day, and obviously this is the youngest you'll ever be again. I was talking to a friend of mine just 2 weeks ago. He was telling me about all these supplements that he's on, and there's the lion's mane mushroom and alpha
The what?
DPC
Wait,
and
the what? Men's
lion.
mushroom.
No, lion mane mushroom. Lion's mane mushroom.
Like hair.
No, man, it's a tablet. It's a pill
For
that you
hair.
take. No, it's supposedly very good. No, it's good for cognition. It's like a nootropic. It's not to give you a lion's mane.
With that name, you could have fooled me.
So, I mean, this is something I want to ask Dr. Mark a little bit later on, but I'm now on like a handful of supplements. So omega 3s and 6s, and there's stuff like there's a fat burner. There's a whole bunch of shit that I'm on.
Fat burner.
I swear to God, every morning I'm taking like a handful. Yeah, take a look at this. This is my little pill thing. I don't know if you can see that. But there's a bunch of pills in here.
I see the omega one.
Yeah, so those are the ones that so this is what I take every day. And I don't know whether they're working or not, but I'm feeling okay. I don't think I look too terrible. We'll see if it pays off. I mean, it's not gonna reverse aging, but I think there's some things you can do, right?
So,
or do you think they're all rubbish? Do you think it's all a waste of money?
So, Gareth, you are now a Butuwadi Pilis. You are the uncle on the pills, because that's what all the old uncles
Is this? Am I wasting my money? Is the point? Because a lot of people say this is just an expensive waste of money.
Maybe very expensive urine, depending on what it is.
Oh,
I think you have to do lots of reading, because all these supplements, like the one supplement helps you absorb the other thing, the D's, the V's, all of those kinds of things. So maybe,
yeah, I mean,
how did you decide what you were taking? Did you talk to someone, or did you just like a professional, or did you just listen to your friends?
I went to the aisle in Dis-Chem with the supplements and I pretty much chose the ones that I thought were the most useful. No? Waste of time.
No, I think you need to consult someone. Like, you need to consult either a homeopath or a specialist GP, because you kind of need to figure out what is it that you are lacking, that you need to add. You probably would find that by just drinking water and eating right, you'll probably do all of the things. Like, if you ate more fleshy fish, if you drank more water, if you ate less red meat, all that nonsense, you'll get all of the stuff that you need.
Steve says, wow, they're massive pills. Are they taken orally or are they suppository? No, they orally take. Carl says, guarantee to get your money back for the fat burner, you fat bastard. Mapello says, I only see Viagra there.
Let me see. I did not see a blue pill.
There's no Viagra.
No, but you should. So I think if you're gonna do it, then you have to do it right. Do the blood tests, do all of those things, and then get whatever it is that's missing. Otherwise, that's just very expensive pee you've got in that cup.
Just say it. You're an idiot, Gareth. Just say it. That's fine. I mean, it was Prof. Harry Seftel in the old days when he was the main guy who used to comment on talk radio and on television. Professor Harry Seftel, he says the only thing that if you buy vitamins, all you're going to do is have very expensive urine, which is exactly what you did. There we go.
Although I must say, this is the one thing that I do sometimes also exercise. That's the other thing. If you do that, drink water, exercise, eat right, you'll be fine.
Well, I mean, Mash Mashinini says the same thing. I believe in 3 to 6 days of exercise and eating right the majority of the time, that is sustainable. There's no way you'll be on fat burners and Lion's tablets when you're 50. Save your money, G. Okay, thank you so much.
Although you do need some tablets, I think. You like I have lots of B multi like a B multi vitamin, right? Because like you need the energy, you need the synapses. Because as you get older, your memory is going. But also the other thing that helps with memory and cognitive is reading out loud, Gareth.
Reading out loud, is that what helps your brain?
Mhm. It keeps the connections. It keeps the connections vibrant. I read years ago one of these medical journals, I think a Stanford one, about
Mhm.
just reading and reading out loud in particular, because of the parts of the brain that it exercises. Also, as you get older, you don't do that kind of stuff, right? We don't make the time. We don't make the time for reading. There's so much more competing interests that that part of the brain kind of stops working in the way that it does. It should.
Well, yeah, okay. Look, I don't know, because there are some things that people tell me about Sudoku and about what are those other number games and things and crosswords, and people tell you all of that stuff is good for you. I mean, I heard a horrible story the other day about someone who, I've always thought was really smart. No, look, he's in his 80s or whatever, but he's no longer like making sense. He's a bit demented and can't really figure out what's going on. And there's no filter anymore, so he just starts talking absolute shit in front of people, and it's kind of embarrassing for the family or whatever. Um, and you think, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. First of all, there's probably nothing you could do about it, so you just have to be fatalistic about it and go, okay, well, if that's what's going to, then there's no stopping it at all. But there are probably things you should be taking. I mean, I know a lot of people think that these futurists and these people who've written books like Ray Kurzweil, he takes like a tray full of pills every day, and a lot of them are nootropics. And listen, Ray Kurzweil is a pretty impressive guy. He's the one who believes that the singularity is coming. We're going to reach a point where machines are thinking faster and better than people are. He predicted AI. He's predicted a bunch of things. And by the way, I see in the news this morning, Bill Gates, who is not everybody's favorite person at the moment, but he says AI is the most important tech advance in decades. So in an interview that he gave on Tuesday, he called it as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the personal computer, and the internet, as well as the mobile phone. He says it will change the way people work, learn, travel, get healthcare, and communicate with each other. He was writing about the technology used by tools such as chatbot ChatGPT, developed by OpenAI. He says this is one of the most important things to come along. So, I mean, whether you like Bill Gates or not, you've got to admit this is his area of expertise. I think he's probably right. Something that Kurzweil said. He reckoned what you have to do is try and stay as optimally fit, healthy, and attentive. Like, you have to actually pay attention to the world around you, which is something I try to do. I try to exercise 4 to 5 times a week. I try to eat reasonably well, although I can't always say that I follow that. And just be ready so that when medical science comes along with something amazing, you are in the best possible condition to either stay at that age or stay in that condition, or even to reverse it if possible. I mean, no one's going to last forever, but it's worth trying to be as healthy as
Thank
you possibly.
goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness
Well,
we're not going to last forever. Because there are two things that I absolutely love about getting older. The first one being the no filter thing, right? As you get older, people just like accept it either as wisdom or,
yeah.
or or chalk it up to what you were saying about the person that you know, or chalk it up to dementia, like old age dementia. But the no filter thing is so freeing. You can just tell
Yeah.
people off.
No, for sure.
Love
Just
that.
while we're telling people off, Juliana wants to know. She's just come from the app to YouTube so she can ask for an update on the dodgy neighbor who disappeared. You remember? Okay, so remind people, because this is now a couple of months ago. So obviously she's a stalwart, and Juliana, we love questions like this. This is from the people who are really paying attention.
So the guy is still gone. There
Oh my
is
god.
now there is still a gaping hole. So for people who don't know the story, we had a new neighbor in the complex that I live in. There's still a couple of stands that need to be built on because we all bought, and then the crash, the 2008 economic crash came. So lots of
Right.
people who bought stands couldn't build houses. And then as the economy was changing, people started building houses. A
Mhm.
couple of months, a year now, maybe in the lockdown, in kind of 2020 lockdown,
Right.
a stand was bought by a new person. I've never seen this person. Some people have. There was a lot of ruckus around this person, but he came, and we live on a slope. I live in North Cliff, so we have a slope, which means that there's a lot of work, pre-work, that has to be done, either in leveling up your stand or whatever you decide you're going to build has got to be able to live on a slope. This guy came, bought this place, and then got a TLB in and started excavating.
Right.
Just
Made a huge big hole.
excavating to level his stand, I suppose, in
Right.
preparation for building. But I don't think he did the right kind of consultations. And obviously, the community WhatsApp group went apeshit. People trying to stop him, people, and then it started raining. Heavy rains, and he's on a stand that is next to the perimeter wall of a
Hmm.
higher complex just above us. And that whole wall came crashing down. There's a gaping hole there now. And
So it's now,
and then he
I mean,
disappeared.
and that's a security risk for the whole complex, obviously, because people can come in suddenly.
And we have had incidences. We have now had incidences of people coming in. But
Right.
there's also an issue now with drainage, because without the retaining wall, there's now a drainage issue with the complex.
Oh, oh,
And then the guys disappeared. And this is after, when he was initially kind of engaged about this, he also threatened to get the EFF. He was like, he knows people in the EFF, which was very funny because most of the people in our complex are black. So we're not scared of the EFF.
Ah.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
not.
that's great. That's so great. Oh man.
We're not. Is that what kind of
Well,
scariness? But so
um,
the dodgy neighbor is still gone. There is still a gaping hole. There is now weeds. Obviously, the weeds are now growing in that
right.
open space. It's a mess, guys. It's a mess. I still don't know who he is, because somebody said to me that he's actually a famous person. I still don't know which famous person he is. I asked one of the neighbors to tell me what show he's on. Tell me what
Yeah.
TV show I have to look out for. Or just send me a picture. He still hasn't sent it. It's a
Mm.
mess. It's a mess, guys.
All right. Well, Michael John says, Gareth, you need to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast with Andrew Huberman. They claim to be reversing aging in mice. I'd love to get your take on it. Well, I will do that. It's my homework then. I'll make sure I pay attention there. Hey, Phumi, if they could reverse aging, you telling me you wouldn't do it? Come
No,
on.
we have had this conversation about being like younger but having all the knowledge that you have now. I'd just be
Mm,
grumpy. I no, no.
come
I
on.
the things I know now, I'm quite okay with the fact that there's more time behind me than ahead of me. Um, I'm okay with
You
that.
reckon?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. It's
Okay.
listen here, it's a shit show. It's a shit show, and we're just trying to make this piece of earth that we're on and this time that we're in as amazing as it can be. But would I want to stretch that out? No.
DK says mountain biking, enduro, MX, and road motorcycling keep your reflexes in top condition. Also, great exercise. Yeah, I mean, also very dangerous in South Africa because people don't really think bike, and
Eh,
I
no,
would
no,
be
no, no,
careful
no,
about
no.
it, especially the road stuff. I mean, if you're in
Gareth,
mountain biking, yeah, yeah, no, no, no. I
I
think
was
that
not going to bring this up.
go on.
Driving here this morning, it's much darker now.
Mm,
And driving here this morning, I drive past lots of people running and cycling. And after all those stickers telling all the people to think bike, I think it's time we got cyclists to get like fucking think car.
No, I agree.
People are wilding on the road and it's dark and they're wearing dark clothes and they like, no, it's they must also think car.
Listen, I'm on your side. I have never stood up for the cyclists, except for this morning. I thought it was a good thing to mention that if you're going to take up this dumb hobby, there is a danger involved in it. But I totally agree with you. And some of them are riding like 3 abreast on the road. They're taking up the whole thing.
Ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I'm not going to go back down the street because I know the territory well, and I'm with you.
I was very annoyed this morning driving in here, just coming down this main road here on Oxford. Just as I was about to turn into, there was a group of about maybe 10 cyclists hurtling down the road. Fucking idiots. Think car.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they must do. Think car.
Go. Well, people are agreeing with you. Annette, Derek, Steve, they all say all of this is hugely correct, that you don't think bike, they must think car. Road bicycles are a problem. Mountain bikers are different. I agree with that too. I mean, I've got this one friend. He and his girlfriend are always on their bikes. They ride around. They do these off-road things. And I mean, listen, the two of them are very fit. They seem to be very happy with this hobby of theirs. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but yes, I think
even the mountain bikers. I have a mountain bike, and I sometimes ride in the park here, in the botanical gardens. Mm-hmm. Those people, listen. People are rude. People are selfish. They are people walking and people cycling, and they will bloody run you over. Listen, people on bikes, and I'm a very slow biker. I'm a very slow biker. I sometimes ride my bike in the park, but hey, people are reckless out there.
Well,
people are reckless.
Mike says, I don't want to live a day over 65, 70 because I want to die still looking good, completely superficial. Yeah, if it could reverse aging, I'd take that. Yeah, me too. There you go.
I love the fact that you think at 70 you'd still be good looking.
Slippery Pickle says you stop playing with toys when you become an adult. Buy a car. There we go. All right. Well, we're going to talk to Dr. Mark in a second.
Fellow cycles, biggest pricks with no respect for the road.
Yeah, here we go. There he is. Michael says, I'm an avid cyclist. My fellow cyclists are biggest pricks when it comes to respect for the road. I'm often embarrassed for us. Okay. Now, I did want to show this. You mentioned fake news earlier, Pums, and this is a picture from Monday of some fake news. You know, they've been talking about, I love the way people all over the world who have no idea how the real world works got super excited about Vladimir Putin being charged by the International Criminal Court and by Donald Trump supposedly being arrested. So here's the picture.
I love this. I love these.
Of Donald Trump being perp walked, which of course is total fake news. But there was such hype about this, mostly from Donald Trump, it has to be said. He was the one going, they're going to arrest me. They're going to put me in jail. It's going to be terrible. They're doing this because it's actually about you. It's not about me. They're doing it to me because I'm in the way. That kind of thing. So a lot of people were extra excited about something that was never going to happen.
He started it. And very much like Julius, he had a very specific goal. And do you know what his goal was? Do you know how much money he has raised in the past 3 days for his campaign? Just from this kind of the idea that Donald Trump could be arrested because, as he says, to stop him from running for president, to stop him from kind of making America great again. Do you know how much money he's raised? It's unbelievable. Fake, and this is AI generated. These images are AI generated.
Right. So this is not actually this is not even like photoshopped. It's AI generated. There was one where he's walking and Joe Biden is walking next to him with his sunglasses on, like he's just done the arrest himself. I mean, it's
Listen,
unbelievable.
there's one where the police have just after the one where he's running, the police have grabbed him. Melania is shouting and screaming. It's like,
Wow.
and he's being held down because he's, fighting. It's insane.
It's just, it does strike me as odd though that there's so many people who fall for this stuff, because I do think it's ridiculous for people who are massive Trump supporters and are worried about this stuff, because what are the chances? First of all, it's the New York Attorney General, and Trump hardly spends any time in New York. He's being charged with a misdemeanor. It's still around that Stormy Daniels thing, which is such a non-story. And look, if you are prepared to arrest your political opponents, which is what the Attorney General in New York is trying to do here, it doesn't speak well of the people who say, oh well, this is just a political. It is a purely political move. I mean, the Stormy Daniels thing is not a felony; it's a misdemeanor, and it's ridiculous. And I do think that this has given Donald Trump and his supporters an enormous amount of oxygen. People weren't paying attention to him until now.
What always fascinates me about America and the legal system. So, first of all, in America, when they are out to get you, they will get you.
Yes.
And they are, because of the way that the system works, the Attorney General actually has quite a lot of leeway. And they're not above, and this is a story that I found fascinating when they eventually broke the mafia. And this was
Al Capone.
And again, you talk about misdemeanors, is because they couldn't build a case around what they really wanted to catch him for. They consulted with the legal professor in one of the Ivy League universities, and they built a case around something smaller, but something that they could convict him on.
Right.
And that essentially got him off the streets for them. Right. And it's one of the things that I'm always fascinated by, watching our NPA bumbling about and fucking up all sorts of really important cases, which I think would go a long way in terms of making the South African public begin to feel like something is being done about corruption, and all those people who have benefited from corruption is they're just not being smart about the way that they're building the cases and getting people in orange overalls. In America, they will fucking arrest you. You can be 60, 70, Bernie Madoff. You will die in prison if they want you. If you fuck with their systems.
Don't mess with the law.
You will die in prison. I mean,
but it's not a good look when
they put Martha Stewart in prison.
No, but what I'm talking about here, this is political. Sure, those are famous people and everything, and I get it. And I know what you're saying is they can concoct charges and they'll see them through. But in this case, it's not a great look for a Democrat attorney general to be actively looking for ways to lock up the presidential candidate or the former president. Forget about the presidential candidate for the next election. The former president. This does not look good. It's a very ill-advised move because it's going to make him more popular. The people who hate him are not going to change their opinion. The people who love him are not going to change their opinion. But the people in the middle, there may be a few of them who go, actually, I don't love Donald Trump and I don't love the Democrats, but this kind of behavior is not how people behave in a democracy. This is not what the law should be used for. Anyway. All right. Have we got Dr. Mark? Let me see if he's there and he's ready for us.
Oh, Ryan was Dr. just Mark. In here and on the phone. So, yay!
Morning, guys.
Morning. How are you?
I love your glasses.
You know what? I try. I don't have a sparkling personality, so I'm trying with the glasses.
Nonsense. All right, so Dr. Mark, we don't want to waste any time with you. I want to go straight into it because Phumi was laughing at me and mocking me earlier. Because I take a whole bunch of supplements every morning. So I've got a bunch of things here, omega-3s. And am I a stupid idiot who's wasting my money? Or are there some of these that you would recommend to your patients?
Gareth, I'm going to ask you a simple question. What was your first car?
It was a City Golf.
Okay, what are you driving now?
I don't own a car at the moment, but thanks to Phil Kutzer at DeWitt Motors, I'm driving a Mercedes at the moment, which is much better than my City Golf.
What's the difference between the two cars other than just the cost?
Well, I mean, everything, Doc. This car is
Everything. When it comes to supplementation, think of the same principle. It's all about the technology. So the problem that we have today is if you walk into any of your retail pharmacies or into any of your health stores, or even just into Clicks or Pick and Pay, there's a myriad, there's one big aisle allocated to supplementation. The problem is that if you take any of those just willy-nilly, you really do not know what you're taking. And when it comes to supplementation, that's the problem. Everything that is on the bottle will be found in some form or another in the actual tablet. But whether you're absorbing it, whether it's in the right quantity, that becomes an issue. So all of us need supplementation in one form or another. It's whether we actually get something that works.
Okay, so I mean, basically, this is what Phumi was saying, more or less the same. I hate to give Phumi
Dr.
all
Mark,
the
do you need a nurse there in your clinic?
No, I think there's one needed at the studios.
And he pretty much said exactly the same thing, and then said to me, well, you've got to go for blood tests. You've got to do it properly if you want to do this. You got to figure out where you have things that, and this is what you've said to me before as well, is go and do the proper tests, figure out what your system needs, figure out what you need to do, and then you can take this seriously. Otherwise, you're just wasting money. So that's pretty much it, right?
Gareth, I'm going to ask you the question, why do you think you need to take supplementation?
Well, again, this is just, it's something that came up in conversation the other day. A friend of mine said, well, I take these and these and these, and it's made me feel much, much better. But he's not a doctor. And it might work for him, but it might not work for me. Is that the correct answer?
Well, I was thinking more along the line that if we look at our diets, all of our diets are depleted in enough nutrients. We are not eating the same foods, not made the same anymore. It doesn't have the same qualities as it used to have 20 or 30 years ago. So nutritional depletion for us is a real problem. Now, add to that pollutants, the way we live, stress, etc., there's higher demand on our body's natural stores. And these get depleted, and they lead to problems in hormone systems. And this is why we supplement. If we, for instance, look at energy metabolism, where your thyroid plays a role, think of your thyroid hormones as the furnaces that's supposed to burn energy to give us electricity. So I like using ESCOM because like our energy metabolism, it's not working. So you can transport glucose from the blood to the power station, okay? And for that you need insulin. But at the power station, the stuff actually needs to be burned to form ATP. That's what the body uses as energy. Right. But for that whole thing to work, you need magnesium, you need zinc, you need selenium, you need CoQ10, you need vitamin D, you need iron. So if one of those are not functioning, or if one of those are depleted, the whole system starts crashing again, like ESCOM. If there's cable theft or someone somewhere doesn't have electricity. And that's the problem that we are facing today. So supplementation is crucial, but it needs to be done correctly. Booms.
I have a question about collagen, right? So
Yes.
there's a big
I
fad
like this
now.
one.
There's a big fad. There's collagen everywhere. There's like cheap collagen, expensive collagen. There's broth collagen. There's powder. Like, can't I just make a bony broth and drink that?
I thank you for saying that, because the bone broth that you are going to make, you actually know that you're going to get collagen. The one that you buy online that comes in a powder in a bottle or in a tub, you might as well, in some instances, take some old horse hoof and grind it up because it contains collagen. Whether you're going to absorb that collagen, that's the issue. Collagen goes through the gut. If you put something into your mouth, it needs to be absorbed through the gut, and collagen is not readily absorbed through the gut. I'm going to stick my neck out now and say that there are two collagens on the market. They're both liquid collagens with scientific data to prove their absorption and efficacy on various conditions, from skin to bone to wound healing to dental work to eyes to hair growth. But they have scientific studies that prove their efficacy. The stuff that you buy, go and try and find any data. Again, it comes to, this is a brilliant thing to take. Just make sure that what you are taking is backed up by science and not glorified marketing.
No one talks about nutrition.
We can't hear you, Gareth.
Sorry. I wanted
Okay.
to just quickly address the thing that you actually came on to talk to us about. And this is become such an area of confusion for people. Metabolism. Everybody talks about their metabolism. And, as I get older, my metabolism has got slower. So now I need to eat differently and exercise differently. And what's the truth of all of this? And Doc, have they discovered any new things about metabolism?
So if we look at metabolism, we're actually looking at all the chemical processes that happens in the body. So that's the metabolism. Mm-hmm. So it's not just your energy metabolism. It's the detoxifying, it's blood pressure. Everything that has to do with the chemical process forms part of your metabolism. So what we are finding, and this is quite frightening, weight gain and obesity in Africa is one of the fastest growing diseases. And the World Health Organization has classified obesity as a chronic disease, and therefore it should be treated as such. So often we judge people with excessive weight and say, you know what, they really are the way they are because of what they eat or how they eat. And if they exercise a little bit more willpower, they won't be so obese. Now, actually, that's been turned around. And we can safely say that you are what you do not eliminate. And weight loss is no longer only willpower, but more a fact of biology. And here we're looking at the metabolic processes again, where you absorb food, where you transport and or where you digest the food, in other words, your gut, how you transport that energy that you get from your food to the cells, and then how you use this in the cells. So here we have a couple of hormones that immediately come to mind. You have insulin that is responsible for glucose metabolism. That's something that I think you really can control with diet. Right. And then you have your thyroid. So many of our patients are presenting with hypothyroidism or underactive thyroid, or at least subclinical hyperthyroidism. And this is where on paper the thyroid looks okay, but it's not functioning because of your cofactors which you don't have. Iron metabolism plays an incredibly big role. There's a direct correlation between obesity and iron deficiency. We don't know which one is causing which, if it's the obesity that causes iron deficiency through its suppression of hormones in the liver or activation of hormones in the liver. And then, as I said, vitamin D, CoQ10, magnesium, trace elements, that's responsible for thyroid metabolism, so energy metabolism. I think one of the... Sorry, Gareth?
No, just because we're kind of out of time here already, but you've got your show, and I invite people to listen to this because you can get into more detail on Dr. Mark's show. It's the T Health Show. It's Dr. Mark from the T Clinic, and you can find out on Thursdays at 9 a.m. what's happening on the show, or you can get the podcast anytime you like. Are you going to be talking about this today?
No, actually today our show was sponsored by Zille, and we're talking about skincare. Zille has a skincare range which is very affordable, very effective, and very easy to use. It's a beautiful range to start a young person on, and you can buy it at any discount. So we're talking about that range today.
Fantastic. Doc, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We will catch up with you at 9 o'clock. What do you want to put?
Can the Zille do something about this little...
And Dr. Phumi, you need to come and see me.
This one.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mark. Nice to see you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Good. There's Dr. Mark. You can catch his show on Cliff Central, 9 a.m. on a Thursday. Make sure you don't miss it. Kanthan is ready. Phumi is ready. We got Helen Zillie popping in. It's going to be a busy morning. Don't go anywhere.
Today, we're actually looking at Jack and how Jack jumps out of his box. So we are going to look at the male reproductive organs. The average male penis is getting longer.
Girth, flaccid girth, is 9.31 centimeters, 3.67 inches.
So basically...
No,
can't be, Elise. It
What
looks
kind
like
of-
a Coke can.
But I want to go back to your question, what determines length and girth of the penis? It starts with pregnancy already. So if the mother of the baby hasn't been living healthy, avoiding chemicals, avoiding all of that, and her HCG levels wasn't good enough, then the penis doesn't develop enough.
Thanks, Mum.
That was the T Health Show, empowering you with knowledge. Download all previous episodes on your favorite podcast platform. The T Health Show is brought to you by T Clinic.
This week on the AutoTrader podcast.
First question is from Anonymous, who's asking, I'd like to apply for car finance but don't have a license. Can I use my husband's license to apply for it? And the debit order will be on my account.
So the quick answer to that question is no. Like, anonymous, there's a reason why you put anonymous there, is because instinctively you know that you can't do this. There's no bank and no finance or insurance company that is going to give you anything related to loans or insurance related to a vehicle on someone else's license. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on AutoTrader.co.za.
All right, it is a Thursday morning, and that means at 7 o'clock, only one thing needs to be on your mind, and that is the burning platform. It is our chance to check in on the most important current events of the week, to find out what has been going on in the news. And we're joined, as always, by Phumi Mashiko, who is in the studio, along with Kanthan Pillay. It's going to be a hell of a conversation this morning. Kanthan, why are you not on microphone there? Let's just see.
I am on mic, Gareth.
Kanthan's brought us a friend. He's brought his daughter to the studio, but she's not near a camera, so you can't see her. But she's got earphones, so people must like watch yourselves with the swearing, people. We're not gonna like we please watch yourselves with the swearing, okay, Gareth and Kanthan.
My offspring goes to high school, guys. There is nothing that they do not say that is going to offend the ears of most people.
Yeah.
So,
well,
so
we'll also, I mean, there's another reason you shouldn't really swear or use foul language this morning, and that's because Helen Zillie is joining us, and we're going to check in with Helen Zillie. We haven't had her on the show for a long time. Helen, it's a great pleasure to have you on. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's been a tough time, but we all get onwards and upwards. That's all.
Good. Well, I'm pleased to hear that. So we've got quite a lot to talk about, but I think we'll start off with Kanthan causing a lot of noise on social media, which he always does. And maybe you can comment on this first, Helen, but here's Kanthan's tweet.
That's right. Throw us in the deep end, why don't you, Gareth?
Well, I mean, let's go, because we don't really want to talk about the national shutdown, which turns out to be the national letdown. And I did see yesterday, and we can talk about this in a moment or two, that there was a vote to try and remove, there was a motion to try and remove the speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. It failed in Parliament yesterday. But it was interesting to see who our parliamentarians are, because they, for the first time in a long time, on news, they followed it live, and we could see who our actual representatives in Parliament are. Interesting little hour of my life that I won't get back, but it did provide me with some useful information. So, Helen, what do you think of this tweet of Kanthan's? He said, here's the swearing that we promised we wouldn't do in our DA, is that instead of focusing on stuff that they do well and everyone else salutes, service delivery, clean audits, day zero, they preach stuff that is inherently divisive. Vaccines, Ukraine, Zimbabwe, rainbow crosswalks. I still have no one to vote for. So I'm going to let you go first here, Helen. You are the national chairperson of the national federal chairperson. So perhaps you want to address whether or not you think Kanthan has a good point here.
Look, that's a typical tweet. A trite, throwaway brain fart, frankly, that doesn't begin to get to the heart of why people vote and what they vote for. The bottom line is this. When you vote, you've got to understand what you are voting for and what the alternatives are. And you've also got to understand that almost everything in South Africa is divisive. Kanthan himself started a political party with perhaps the most deliberately divisive name that they could come up with, which is the Capitalist Party of South Africa. Now, if you want a word that divides people fundamentally on the basis of race, irrespective of whether they understand the intricacies of economics, it is the word capitalism. And of course, Kanthan and his mates did that in order to be deliberately divisive, because they know that politics is a binary thing and that it offers choices. Now, it's not that we go around preaching things. It's that as a political party, we deal with topical issues, and you have to have a position on topical issues. And every position you ever take is divisive. If you, for example, say in South Africa, we stand for non-racialism, there'll be a huge number of people who disagree with you. If you say we would like all race laws to be removed from the statute book, there are a very large number of people who disagree with you. When Russia invades Ukraine against international law and violates a rules-based international order, a serious political party doesn't just sit there. You have a foreign policy and you take a position. Obviously, not everyone's going to like your position, but no one has a position on anything that everybody likes. Politics is about the binary, and it's about making choices. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, when I was canvassing for a by-election that we're having, and we do a lot of phone canvassing, I called a person in a local by-election who said, I'm not voting for the DA because of your position on LGBTIQ+. I said, sir, this is a local by-election. It's got nothing to do with our position on LGBTQI+. It is about whether there is water in your taps. It is about whether your refuse is removed. It is about whether your streets are swept and the grass is cut. And frankly, our position on LGBTQI+ does not come into it. Your options are between the DA and 3 other parties who you know will either loot the fiscus or do nothing. That is your choice. Now, there are many, many voters who don't like what we say about one thing and therefore claim they have no party to vote for. So they're prepared to get fixated on the one thing they don't like that the DA says, and then facilitate the election of parties that stand for grand corruption and a mafia state. That's what the alternative is.
Well, let's let Kanthan defend his tweet, and then we'll move on to some other questions because I don't want to get stuck in the mud on this. But go on, Kanthan.
Celebrity deathmatch.
Look, I think that we could go back and forth on this. I take Helen's position, and I stand by my position, which is basically, if we are going to rally people around stuff that's actually going to persuade people to get to the polls. Remember, we had 11 million people who did not go to the polls in the last election. Now, if those 11 million people were going to the polls, then we would be able to topple our thieving overlords very quickly. And from my perspective, it's very clear. The way in which we end up toppling those thieving overlords is by focusing on the stuff that's going to bring people together. And the DA does a lot of stuff that actually people agree on. And we just have to look at the phenomenal job that Chris Pappas is doing out in the Ngeni municipality as an example of how, if you just focus on the messaging and change the messaging so it's only about delivery, people will come to the polls. And the issue for me, guys, so in the last municipal elections, obviously I voted DA in my ward for exactly the reasons that Helen has been outlining. But the fact of the matter is that we are not going to persuade the 11 million people who didn't vote to come to the polls unless we are actually focusing on the reasons why they should come to the polls. And the reasons why they should come to the polls are exactly the things that the DA does well. But the DA doesn't spend enough time talking about that in public. The stuff that gets amplified in public by the likes of Alan Windley, who really, he goes and picks on people who end up saying things with regard to vaccines, again, that are hugely divisive. Why? Why not just shut the fuck up, focus on the stuff that you do well, which is that the Western Cape is the best run province in the country, and just keep talking about that. When it comes to your tweets, start off by the morning by saying, here's a team out in the Western Cape that's refurbishing this road surface. Okay, then when the afternoon comes along, show the smooth flow of traffic based on the fact that traffic lights are actually working, and keep hammering that sort of messaging home. People will get up and say, I want to go to the polls. But that's not the stuff that people enjoy. Yes.
Are you offering this as like free advice for Helen on a Thursday morning? Helen, did you want this free advice, or is it unsolicited and unwelcome?
It's all, look.
Well, I think Kanthan's living under a rock, because we do that every single day. We do that every single day. We have all the social media platforms, from Twitter to TikTok and everything in between, amplifying our governance successes. But the point is, we don't only run Umgeni, which is a small municipality in KwaZulu-Natal. We're very pleased to run Umgeni. And there, obviously, Umgeni amplifies its local government successes all the time. We also are in Parliament. We also have a shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs, or International Relations, as it's now called. We have all those people, And I can assure you that if we were saying nothing on Ukraine, with our government being the international pariah on the subject, we would be fundamentally failing in our duty.
Actually,
We
no, I'm going to
haven't-
disagree with that point fundamentally, because the international pariahs at this point, if you draw a map of the world and look at who has supported the votes against Russia, it's entirely the Western world. This is a white
see,
people's war, Helen. Absolutely, this is
It's
a
a-
white people's
no,
war.
no. It's a
Consider
war
the
on
fact
democracy,
India, the world's biggest democracy, Helen, the world's biggest democracy, has taken a neutral stance on this war. China, the
It's
world's
a
second
war
biggest
around the
country,
rule of law.
has taken, it is not a war against the rule of law. It is a war against the fact that the US has consistently broken its word in terms of not expanding its borders right up to the doorstep. And I promise you, if my neighbor is going to turn around and plant machine guns that are pointed directly into my yard, I'm going to do something about it.
All right,
Now,
so you have a different view on
I
You
have
have a
decided,
different view on
but
Ukraine.
more crucially, the majority of the South, for want of a better word, is taking that view. Why is it that we now have the scenario that Brazil is now rallying around Russia? You've actually had, for the first time, this alliance between the Saudis and the Iranians now coming together. There is going to be a BRICS-based currency that is going to supplant the US dollar. The US dollar is on the verge of collapse because they have printed more US dollars in the Biden administration that ever existed in the course of history. Now, at the point at which the global financial system collapses, where the hell is your rules-based order going to be, Helen? You guys have your heads so firmly up your asses that you don't understand the seismic shift that's happening in the world right now in terms of this foreign policy. And I promise you that a year from now, you are going to look back on this war and you will see how fundamentally the world has been transformed, particularly in terms of the agreement that was signed between the Russians and the Chinese over the past couple of days. Read that with great detail, because right now, the bloc that we have in terms of Russia and India and China and Brazil is the world's biggest economy, not the US. And they are the single growth point for us from a trade point of view. And if we are not shifting our focus as a country to the West and getting our heads out of the asses of the United States, we are going to be totally reamed.
So
I'm very clear about that.
I listen, I mean, we expect this kind of forthright conversation. It's always welcome. And I only have Helen for another 10 minutes. I know Pumi's got some questions for her too. Can I just say that yesterday it was quite interesting to watch. I mentioned this in the introduction, who our parliamentary representatives are, because during a vote of no confidence for the speaker, they actually make each member of parliament stand up and then they have to vote yes or no or abstain. I noticed the DA all abstained in a block. The ANC obviously voted no. Some of the other parties voted no, and then the EFF alone. And I think ATM were the only one who voted yes. So it failed spectacularly. But it was interesting to see who our members of parliament are. And, you know, this is something that I think is a valid point worth making and remarking on, since we're talking to the national chairperson of the DA's federal council. The DA is the most diverse party in parliament. I mean, this goes without saying. There are more people of all kinds and creeds and colors and ages and variety than in any other party. That's quite an achievement, Helen. It's something you've been banging the drum about for a long time, right?
Well, absolutely. It's a fact that very few people want to recognize. Even the other day, Annika Larsen, no less, said in an interview that the DA caucus in Parliament was lily white. I thought, have you also been living under a rock for so long? We are the only diverse party in South Africa, and we are the only one that draws its support base from all racial groups. For example, 1/3 of our voters are black, 1/3 are brown or colored, and the other third are white. There's no other party that can claim that. And that is an extraordinary achievement in a country like South Africa. And those are the people who genuinely want non-racialism. And of course, that concept is very divisive. There are many people who want a country only for black people. There are other people who want a country only for white people. And so we can go on. We know who Gayton McKenzie appeals to. So ethnic racialism is a very popular thing in South Africa. And Kanthan would say the DA is divisive by saying it's not our future. We have to stand together across racial lines to build a country jointly. And people don't like that. But that's too bad, because that's the DA's policy. And not everybody is going to like what we say. We aren't trying to appeal to people who fundamentally differ from our values. We're trying to appeal to people who can resonate with what we say. And whatever Kanthan says about the emergence of a new international order, we should all be very worried. Because if force is going to be the way in which international relations are developed and in which sides are chosen, then we're in for serious trouble. This sounds like the end of the Weimar Republic in Germany to me, and the annexation of Poland.
If we're going to talk about force being the model, it's 20 years since the Iraq War. Let's talk about force there. Let's talk about force that was used in Libya. Let's talk about force that is used in Syria. Why does the DA never say anything about the fact that there are countries currently invading the DRC? We don't yet talk about that. Why do we not talk about the fact that the US has troops on the ground in Somalia? We don't hear the DA talking about that. So the DA is very selective. DA, yes, exactly. So why the selective targeting of what actually goes on in Ukraine when there is a pattern of this being happening?
Different things. But we can't go into, I mean, the troops are doing different things. We're in so-called peacekeeping forces across the continent because there are wars all over the place that have incredibly bad spin-offs for the continent and the people as a whole. But let's not go into all of this. The point that I'm making is that the reason to vote in South Africa is to save this country from a failed mafia state. That's the overriding reason. The reason to vote in South Africa is how are we going to save this democracy? You may not agree with what the DA does here or there or in Ukraine or in Somalia, but the bottom line is this: can we save this democracy? Or are we going to become a criminal mafia state that we already are? And can we turn that around? That's the reason to vote.
You know, I think if anything, you both agree on the fact that there is serious reason to vote. And what you're disagreeing about is what are the things that are going to get people to the polls. But one of the things, and just talking about the fact that nobody speaks a lot about the leadership of the DA or how diverse the DA is. On this show, I often talk about how we know very little also about most of what the DA platform is. And that's because we don't see a lot of it in mainstream media. And the DA's got an election coming up, internal elections. We haven't been speaking a lot about that. But what I did see, Helen, is that 16 years in, you are once again running for the position of chairperson of the Federal Council of the DA. And I'm just wondering why you believe that even after a 16-year run, you haven't done what needs to be done and you need to run again for another term.
I'm running for a different position from the one that I started on in 2007. Let me just do the calculation. It probably is that long, 16 years. But the point is that I've been nominated and I'm uncontested. So somebody somewhere must think I'm doing a good job. And not only someone, but many, many people, because in the DA, people contest positions all the time and they are welcomed and invited to do so. So I didn't nominate myself for this position, and anybody else could have been nominated to contest me. That's what we welcome in the DA. And so I've got a lot of energy going.
Does that mean that the DA or people who are nominating you in the DA don't see other people as viable leaders of this party? Is there a succession problem in the DA?
No, there isn't a succession problem. We've been running a young leaders program since 2007. We've got some wonderful up-and-coming leaders. Chris Papas is one of them. Jordan Hillers is one of them. Retief Odendaal is one of them. Tyron Gray is one of them. We've got a whole range of extraordinarily good leaders. Look at our presiding officers over our Congress. Dr. Mimi Gondwe is there. Richard Masango is there. If you look at the leadership of the DA, it is, and you can laugh about this, Phumi, But when you talk about the diversity of leadership, you go and take a look at the leadership of any other party and see whether it comes anywhere close to the diversity of the DA's leadership. None of them come anywhere close to the diversity of the DA's leadership.
One
I'm
quick
not running
thing.
for the leader of the party. I'm running for chair of Federal Council. And in fact, I've been nominated and elected unopposed. So I'm not running anymore. People believe that I know how to run things, that I know how to manage things, that I know how to align things, that I know how to work 18 hours a day, which I do, that things don't fall through the cracks. And we're the only party that can run a viable organization, the only one in the whole country that can do that can run
Helen,
due process, systems and structures that function. Why do you think that is?
Can I throw in one last question, because I know we've only got a few minutes left with you, and I know Kanthan still wants to talk international stuff, and there's lots of other stuff on the agenda. But quickly, Yonder says to me, Gareth, you have to ask Helen, what is the DA vision, and why should we vote for the DA? I mean, there we go, the elevator pitch.
Right, the elevated pitch. The DA's vision is a country that is prosperous and peaceful, where people see themselves as South Africans first before they define themselves in terms of their race. The DA sees a society in which everyone has an opportunity to be the best they can be, where the government is clean and honest and creates opportunities for people and defends their rights and especially their freedoms. And we believe in a country that has a social market economy which encourages investment, job creation, and growth, and lives at peace with its neighbors and is amongst the community of democracies worldwide. That is the DA's vision, and it can be achieved. We're currently sitting in a mafia criminal state, which is the dead opposite of the DA's vision.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to let you carry on with your busy day. And thank you again for joining us on the show. It's always good to see you and to hear from you. And it's good to see someone who's actually prepared to spar with Kanthan every now and then, which is...
But I want to say that I 100% endorse that elevator pitch, unreservedly.
Well, that's the reason to vote. That is the reason to vote, Kanthan.
And I'm saying focus on that messaging.
We focus on it every day.
You don't.
You are the kind of
the reason why Yonder
had reason not to vote for the DA.
Yonder had to ask the message. Yonder had to ask the message because Yonder didn't know.
Well, the point is, we never stop talking about that message, and people who don't want to vote for the DA will look for every reason not to, rather than the millions of reasons to do so. That's the problem.
Do you feel, just quickly, Helen, do you feel that the media gives you an unfair run? They don't give you as much of a chance as they do other parties. I mean, you know, Phumi mentioned the mainstream media. We don't hear this.
The bottom line is the media has always been massively unfair to the DA and always held up an extraordinary double standard to the DA. It is quite amazing what other parties get away with. And any minor issue that the DA does is held to a completely different standard, blown entirely out of proportion and misrepresented. We're very used to that. It's always been that way. And we've lived and we've survived through that. And the last book I will probably write, if I still have it all together to do so when I'm 95, is the book about how the DA's warnings and positions were right and the media got it wrong on every single key issue.
Well, we will wait with anticipation for that book, even if it does take another, how many, I mean, 95 is still a way off, Helen.
A bit.
Thank you so much.
At least 20 years.
They're reversing aging in mice.
There we are. Thank you, Helen Zille. Thank you so much. There she is, the national chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille. I do like it when you get all fired up and when she got fired up and fought back. And I think we've got to pick up on that discussion just quickly. How do you see this development of the new world order taking place, Kanthan? Because you put the fear of God into Helen there, but maybe a bunch of other people who are very confused. What exactly was in this Russia-China agreement that was signed this week by Xi and Putin?
The short answer is that they've promised to defend each other's territorial integrity. So now understand that territorial integrity also means that includes the fact that Russia unreservedly recognizes that Taiwan is an indivisible part of the mainland China. So now what that means is that at the point at which you then have the US trying to perform their gunboat diplomacy and to try and cause trouble out in Taiwan, and on the assumption that it comes to a military confrontation out there, Russia is going to be on the side of China in that conflict. So it's going to be the pair of them that are now going to be united against the US. Similarly, you consider the fact that the territories that Russia occupied, firstly in Ukraine, conducted referenda on those territories where the people overwhelmingly voted to join with Russia. And let's be very clear about that. Those results were absolutely on par with exactly what happened in Crimea 30 years ago, where there was a referendum at the time where they wanted to join with Russia. But instead, the Russians said, no, actually, you guys can hang on and be part of Ukraine. So from the point of view of what it means when the Chinese say that they are going to defend the territorial integrity of Russia, and the Chinese then recognize that Crimea and the Donbass, and pretty soon it'll be Odessa as well, are indivisible parts of Russia. And at the point at which the US is interceding, we are looking down the throat of World War III. So that is the most basic point at which we start off. Okay, the second thing to consider is the fact that the BRICS Bank is going to be a reality. And it's going to be a currency that's going to be backed by real stuff. It's not going to be backed by the fact that the US is going to topple your government if you refuse to accept that the dollar actually has supremacy in terms of global transactions.
I mean, Putin also came out to say that they'll be using the yuan more in their trade with.
They've already started doing that.
No, I'm just saying that they're saying they're using it more, particularly now, with, as you say, BRICS Bank, but also just in terms of Latin America, Africa, and given that they've just had the Russia-Africa
The national
summit.
currency thing already happens to some extent. So India is buying oil from Russia and paying in rupees, as an example. Trade between the UAE, the Saudis with the Russians is now taking place in their own currencies. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has now printed an additional $2 trillion in order to prop up their banks. Now, money has to have value. So if you print $2 trillion out of nothing, correspondingly, it means that the value of all of the dollars in existence actually then has to be reduced because there is nothing that is actually backing it up. That is where inflation actually comes from. Now, the only thing that has propped up the dollar until now is the fact that the US had the ability to actually declare war on you and take you out if you wanted to change currencies. Why was Saddam Hussein toppled? It's because he said he wanted to be paid for oil in euros. So they took him out. Why was Hugo Chavez then ostracized? Because he said that he did not want payment in dollars for oil. He wanted to have payments in other currencies, particularly the euro. So again, he got sanctioned. Venezuela got taken out of the global economy effectively, and they crashed and burned. Libya was regime changed for the same reason.
Okay.
But now,
just to throw this in there are a lot of people in the traditional Western media and in America and in the West who will say, oh no, but that all sounds like conspiracy theory stuff, Kanthan. What is the situation for South Africa? How does it affect us? Because we're kind of, we've been in the non-aligned movement for a long time, but it's clear that we are adjusting our foreign policy to go with Russia and China in the direction they want to lead us. Is this good for us? Is it bad for us? How will we find ourselves best placed?
Well, this depends entirely on what our foreign policy stance is going to be. And frankly, from my side, the best possible thing we could be doing is exactly what India is doing. India has taken a stance of absolute neutrality, but India has also taken a very strongly India-first policy. And what does that mean? India is spending money on buying Russian oil. But again, this is a question of people understanding how to actually uplift a country. Now, one of the things that Modi did when he took over India, which was hugely unpopular at the time, was that he drastically cranked up the price of fuel. Okay, if you think that we're heavily taxed in terms of fuel, the Indians were heavily, overwhelmingly taxed in terms of fuel. And at the time, there was outrage in the streets of India around the fact that their fuel prices had gone up. What he then did was to take the cash that accrued from that dividend of having a higher fuel price, and he's poured that into development. So all of the infrastructure development that you see happening in India comes directly from that dividend. All of the advances that India has been making in terms of its tech programs, its space programs, its weapons programs. Remember that India and Russia have worked together. They have a company called BrahMos, which is developing ICBMs. All of that money has been coming from the fuel dividend. And so Modi has now been buying oil from Russia. So it's substantially discounted oil. He's getting it at around about $30 a barrel. But he's not reducing the price of fuel for Indians. Oh, no. Because all of that dividend is getting plowed back into what's going on. Now consider if Ramaphosa actually said, we're going to be buying oil from Russia. And I did the numbers on this last year, where I said, if we have to end up being on the US's shit list, remember right now, we benefit from the fact that we have the African Growth Opportunity Act, which basically says that AGOA countries are able to export to the US without paying duty on it. Okay. So the situation that we have right now is because of the fact that our stuff enters the US duty-free, there's an amount of money that accrues to us. If the US tosses us out of AGOA, what is the benefit going to be with us then switching across to buying oil from Russia? And the overall benefit for South Africa, if we were to do that right now, is that we would have billions literally flowing into the fiscus based on the differential around what we are paying for fuel currently. And that, to my mind, is the level at which we should be talking about foreign policy. Foreign policy is not about sucking up to other countries. Our foreign policy should be determined by what is going to be in the best interests of South Africa.
But that Kanthan is therein is the difference. You know, when you talk about if Ramaphosa, if, you know, our foreign policy minister Naledi Pandor, if they had a strategy in place, if they had the political will and were thinking about more than just their pockets, but also thinking about the development of our country, thinking about how to get our economy up and running, thinking about how to get millions and millions of young people into gainful employment, then you would be talking about a different thing. But they are not doing that. Our government, unfortunately, at the moment, is not even sleeping at the wheel. They are just not concentrating on what it is that we need as a country to get out of the doldrums that we're in. And unfortunately, I don't think any of the opposition parties that are on the ballot at the moment are doing likewise.
Well, this is not something that the opposition can currently fix.
No.
And, you know, the unfortunate thing is that and again, you know, going back to the DA, because frankly, I believe that the DA currently is the only party that actually has the opportunity to actually grow its base sufficiently. But I'm also convinced that based on the tone-deaf messaging that we are seeing right now, and to a large extent, the DA is doing exactly what the rest of the collective West is doing. When they find that they're getting criticized for particular standpoints, like the war in Ukraine, the thing that they do is to double down. When Biden is told your economic policies are failing, what does he do? He says, no, we're actually going to stay the course. We're going to sanction oil, and we are going to print more money. And, you know, things crash and burn. But the problem, you know, to get back to the point that Gareth, that Phumi just raised, the problem is that Ramaphosa is very firmly in the pocket of the Americans. I'm very clear about this, while the rest of the ANC is not. And it's very clear to me that Ramaphosa is president because of the fact that he was able to buy votes at Nasrec. And so you're going to have the scenario where the ANC is not going to do anything. It's just going to be inertia, which is why you've got a minister of electricity. Even though Gwede has a plan, in terms of energy, which I've largely agreed with, that we need to be exploiting our coal. But Ramaphosa is not going to allow him to do that. Okay, we've had this entire ANC just tearing itself apart with inertia. And it is not going to fix itself. But let's hope Mashatile ends up recalling Ramaphosa, which I think he will only do in 2024.
I do want to hear what you guys think about, and Phumi and I largely discussed the EFF and Julius on Monday, and whether or not that affected your life at all, Kanthan, whether you think it was a win for him, or do you think it was a disaster?
I think it's neither. I think that we give far too much attention to the EFF. Really, the problem in our country is not the EFF. The EFF does not control a single municipality in this country. Even in Johannesburg, Africa's financial capital, the EFF doesn't control a single ward. The EFF's influence in Johannesburg is entirely on the proportional vote. Why do we give these guys so much attention?
Fine, we'll stop. That's fine. We'll end off on that. How do you feel about the ICC and their warrant for Putin? Because there was big fuss made about this, and with regard to Trump's possible indictment. These were two non-stories, because it's not as if anyone's going to march into Russia and arrest Vladimir Putin. And of course, Donald Trump himself, who made the biggest fuss about all of this, wasn't arrested. So again, we're being distracted, right?
Well, remember that that not only does the US not recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC, the US also has an act on their books, which I forget what the official name of it is, but it is codenamed the Hague Act. And basically, the law, which was passed in the US, says that if anyone in the outside world tries to enforce an ICC order against the United States is able not to sanction, to do anything to actually ensure that it doesn't get enforced, including military action. So in other words, if you try and arrest any US citizen on the premise of a warrant that gets issued by the ICC, the US will come and they will invade your sorry ass and they will take their people out. Russia doesn't recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. India doesn't recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. China doesn't recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC.
It's just a bunch of European countries.
Well, we are signatories to the ICC because, we bought into the Rome Statute at the time. Because
when Omar al-Bashir came here, we didn't arrest him, did we?
Yes, but again, how stupid would it be? We're inviting people to our country for peace talks, and then we say we're going to arrest someone. I mean, but again, heads of state, by definition, are exempt from warrants of arrest. In terms of international law, that is UN law, which in theory all of us subscribe to. And
if they want him at the Hague, they know where his office is. If they want him, they know where his office is.
But I must say that.
What do you make of people who were very excited about this? That he was being issued a warrant by the ICC. What do you make of those people? Clearly, they're just deluded idiots.
Because they're clueless. Ask yourself how many people have actually been brought to trial by the ICC. Okay, the starting point is that
Slobodan Milosevic. I can only think of one.
Yes, and Slobodan Milosevic was the only person from Europe who was actually
exactly.
Okay. Otherwise, the ICC is used exclusively to target the third world and particularly Africans.
Only the Africans.
All right. Well, let's leave that one where it is. Do you want to throw anything about the Trump the indictment there? Do you think that that's even worth paying attention to, or do you think it was a big nothing burger as well?
No, Flip, it was brilliant marketing on the part of Trump. But in fact, you guys touched on that earlier today. But yes, the opportunity for him to actually fundraise. The guy's brilliant.
Here's an interesting point being made in the comments by Kevin. He says the IMF has slashed South Africa's 2023 GDP growth forecast to 0.1% due to the power crisis. Inflation's running at 7%. The net negative growth is minus 6.9%.
Absolutely spot on. Remember, we've talked on this show before about the path to prosperity for any country. It's very simple. Your economic growth has to outpace your population growth. It really is that simple. If you get GDP growth to the point at which it is larger than your population growth, you're going to have prosperity. That's how China has plucked itself out of poverty. That's how India is plucking itself out of poverty. They've got a 2% population growth. They've got 8% GDP growth. There's a net benefit of more money for per citizen every single year. We've gone consistently backwards under the Ramaphosa regime. And that's going to continue being the case because of the fact that they're not doing the things that can unlock the economy.
But the food prices and the inflation is also around the world. We're not the only ones. I mean, yesterday, the UK came out with their
hang on a
numbers
second.
as well.
No, hang on a second.
The UK's numbers came out yesterday, and they have the
stop
same
with this around
problems
the
that
world
we're
stuff,
having.
Phumi. Talk about, have the food prices gone up in India? No. Have the food prices gone up in Russia? No. Have the food prices gone up in China? No. Why are our food prices going up?
And that's why I'm specifically saying to you that the UK's numbers yesterday, when they came out, I mean, their inflation is sitting at 10.4%. You know, they are also having a food price crisis. The US is having a similar, which is why they are printing dollars. And this is the thing, right? Is we cannot just look at South Africa in isolation. We have to look at South Africa and look at it in the global picture. We cannot. So it's Ramaphosa. There's no way that we can say that things are better. Even Ramaphosa doesn't know how to contextualize for us that things are dire, that things are bad. You know, he tries to say it in a way that makes it feel like...
let's take a look at food price inflation in South Africa at one very basic commodity, which is milk. Okay. Why is the price of milk going through the roof? The price of milk is going through the roof based on the fact that because we've had electricity shutoffs, we've not been able to keep milk refrigerated. That means that we've had to throw milk away. That means that there's less milk available in the market. And what happens is that when you have a shortage of a commodity, the price goes up. And yes, it ties back fundamentally with the idea of electricity not being available, which is, yes, it's exactly what the listener was saying just now, Gareth, that it's directly linked to the fact. Yes, no, it's the consequences of our lack of electricity. But again, we know how to fix this. We can burn diesel, which we did for the past 3 days.
And we've got lots of coal, we've got lots of diesel. We should be using it, as you mentioned earlier. We shouldn't be worrying about the first world supposed obsession with climate alarmism. Here's Carl DeSantis, who says, Kanthan, if Cyril goes and Paul becomes president, then we're almost guaranteed an ANC-EFF coalition. Are you sure you want Cyril recalled?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure I want Cyril recalled. Because look, frankly, you're not going to have an ANC-EFF coalition. Okay, what you're going to have is a plurality government. So the ANC is still going to be the biggest party, but any candidate that the ANC puts forward for the president of the country is going to need the support of whoever makes up that gap between the ANC's plurality and 50%. So chances are that if Mashatile is put forward as president, that there is an incentive for the DA to actually vote for him. And to put him in office. Remember that at that time, because the ANC is going to be a government that does not have 50%, decisions will actually get taken in Parliament. And remember that the ANC is not going to kowtow to a lot of the fundamental things that the EFF has been pushing for. So at that level, the ANC is going to have to put forward a budget. If it gets support of the DA, the budget will get passed. If it gets support of the EFF, the budget will get passed.
Do you think that this kind of plurality government that you're talking about will pull everyone else towards the center rather than towards the extremes?
That's exactly what I'm hoping is going to happen. And look, and I think that if you consider, is the EFF actually going to grow its base in the next election? I think the answer is no.
I think they're going to decline.
Yes.
But I think
at the same time, I don't think the DA is going to grow its base either.
No,
and
it's going to decline.
Neither is the ANC. This next election is entirely about getting undecided voters to the poll.
But I think that the worst thing about the plurality that we're walking into at the moment is just watching what is happening in the municipalities and watching what is happening in those coalitions. And unfortunately, our politicians are not a sophisticated bunch. They're not willing to put aside their differences long enough to be able to get things done, because none of them care about getting things done. All
Look
of them
at,
care about the
look at,
power, you know?
To your point, Phumi, look at what's happening in Tswane at the moment. I mean, there's just an absolute deadlock on getting a mayor elected. A mayor, one position that we need to start getting things done. And of course, the ANC, the EFF, and I think Gayton McKenzie's people are holding everything back at the moment.
Cope.
They're obstructionist. Cope, correct. It's cope. I mean,
but
cope.
you know, I think the hope, we're humans after all, and we live for hope, and we always hope for the best. But I think what we're seeing in South Africa is we're definitely seeing that what our politicians are more concerned with is they're more concerned with having the power over getting things done. All of them.
So can I bring this up, because one of our listeners who's very sharp here, Slippery Pickle, says, what about the Dutch local elections? Let's end on some good news. And this is good news, because as The Guardian, which is hardly going to be thrilled to report this, but here they report, a new populist party surfing a wave of rural anger at government environmental policies has emerged as the big winner in the Dutch provincial elections, dealing a heavy blow to the four-party coalition of the Prime Minister Mark Rutte. The success of the farmer citizen movement, called the BBB, in Wednesday's vote will now determine the makeup of the Senate, and it casts doubt over the government's ability to pass key legislation, including its plans to slash, listen to this, nitrogen emissions, because now, you know, carbon emissions aren't bad enough. Now we also have to employ all kinds of other stupid rules to get people to conform and to sell their property to the government so that they get out of farming and the government has more land, blah, blah, blah.
You know, the absurdity of the fact that our atmosphere is 80% nitrogen. What we are breathing right now, it's 80% nitrogen. Guys.
Listen, this is the kind of the level of stupidity that a lot of these climate alarmists, I'm going to use that term from now on because it's true, are throwing at people who are keeping the whole economy in Holland going, frankly. I mean, the farming community in Holland is tremendously effective and efficient. They are one of the most productive groups of people in the world. And the government has been on an absolute mission to destroy this community. They're clearly fighting back, and they're getting a lot of support from other people in Holland. So this is good news.
It's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, let's hope that the rest of Europe is actually going to, you know, get their heads out of their asses. And instead of, you know, shipping massive amounts of money off to fund a US proxy war, you know, just imagine if you took that money and plowed it back into your own development. I mean, and use it, you know, going back to the UK example just now, you have the national health system, which is collapsing because of lack of funding.
Yes.
And meanwhile, you have this constant shipping of more money off to Ukraine.
Well,
it's just simply doubling down.
Yeah, I think that the biggest win of what's happened there with the Dutch is that enough people went enough and stood up and stood together for what they believe in. And it's, you know, it's kind of, if we can learn from that as South Africans, to kind of go, what are the things that we want to get done, and how do we wrangle the political parties that exist, or find the ones that resonate with us, and then mobilize to get those individuals into a position to make the decisions that we want made.
Oh, Phumi, you know, if wishes were horses.
It's like hope.
I'm still very excited about the prospect of our new electricity minister making an enormous difference, and Sputla Ramaghopa's the guy. And obviously, this is an awesome way for the ANC to say, look, as soon as we appointed an electricity minister, things got better. And that's what they're going to say.
And they did, in fact, get better for the past 2 days.
Yeah, and then I woke up this morning with my ESP app telling me that we're 55 minutes away from the next bout of load shedding.
Yeah. So it was temporary.
It's got to be sustained.
Well, guys, you know, if there's one thing that we can give credit to the EFF for, because of the fact that they stirred up so much emotion around this shutdown, okay, which on a public holiday when most people were taking the day off in any case,
yeah,
they showed that when necessary, the Ramaphosa regime can actually do law enforcement. The Ramaphosa regime can actually keep the lights on. The Ramaphosa regime can actually control traffic all of the basic things that we want. And that the only reason why it doesn't happen the rest of the year is because they just couldn't care. And
That's
so,
exactly right.
so shout out to the EFF for doing that, really. I think that the single thing that they've shown us is that this country is not as broken as we think it might be. And a lot of what is going on right now, we then have to turn around and say it's actually deliberate because it's pushing particular agendas. In the case of Ramaphosa, and considering that his family is so heavily invested in the green energy sector, we can immediately see who's going to be the beneficiaries of that. So shout out, Julius. No, really. Well
Okay.
done.
I mean,
we
that's
literally have like 4 minutes left, and I so wanted to talk about the riots in France.
Oh, my word. Yes.
well, let's,
I think Macron's going to fall.
do you think so? I mean,
I think Macron's going to fall.
And be replaced by whom? Jean-Marie Le Pen?
No, they're going to have elections again, really. But yeah, but I think he's going to fall.
Is it true? Is it true that that Russia is helping fund Jean-Marie Le Pen?
I can't imagine why they would need to, because it's not as though the type of money that you've got.
I'm sorry, Marine Le Pen.
Marine Le Pen.
The father was Jean. They do not get along, by the way. The father and the daughter have parted ways in a very dramatic fashion, even though he's the founder of the party that she's now in charge of.
Look, I think that Marine Le Pen has been on a steady upward trajectory over the past years. And it's to a large extent, it's been because of the fact that she distanced herself from the very clearly fascist tendencies that her father had. No, if anything, the money that's being poured into these countries right now is coming from the West. You know, very good example, if you take a look at what went down in Georgia a couple of weeks ago, where there was this outpouring of rage against a law that was basically going to say, we don't want foreign money coming in and influencing our elections. And it's a law that, in fact, exists in the US. It exists in the UK. But suddenly the Americans turn around and say it's anti-democratic. But here's the crucial thing for me in terms of what went down on that protest. You suddenly have hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets of Georgia. And guess what? They're all waving Ukraine flags. Now, tell me, you have hundreds of thousands of people who suddenly have this ability to spontaneously print Ukraine flags and take them out on the street? No, there's money that is being poured into that country by NGOs in order to sway opinion. That's the only way that this stuff happens. There is a level of organization that happens on the part of these NGOs, and they're all US-funded NGOs. And they've effectively been able to effect regime change in most countries around the world, in the West. So very clearly, the government in Finland is one of those Soros-backed governments. The government in Estonia is one of those Soros-backed governments. The government in Sweden is one of those the Soros-backed governments. It's all because of the fact that you've had foreign money being poured in there. So, is Russia supporting them with money? I don't think so. Russia has difficulty.
You can also only control the narrative so much, and eventually you're going to see what we've been predicting on the show for a very long time, and which frightens a lot of people, frankly, the fact that there are a lot of these countries that are going to revert to the right. And you mentioned France. So we see what's happened in Holland now. We know Hungary has gone this way. Italy, very much so. So we're seeing all these European countries that have been swinging like the pendulum always does to the left. Now it's going to go to the right. The big worry there is that a lot of this will be anti-immigrant. A lot of it will be quite, sort of, what would you even, you'd probably call it reactionary, right?
No, on the other hand, what I think we should take the view that it's not so much a swing to the right as much as a swing to the concept of nationalism. And I think to a large extent, the problem that we have right now as a country in South Africa is that we're not nationalist enough. We really should be putting South Africa first in terms of our policies. Our policies should first and foremost uplift our citizens. Yes, by all means, we need to be welcoming of genuine refugees who are coming to our country, as opposed to people who've had plane tickets paid for them from Afghanistan to come down here. And it's American NGOs who are paying for those plane tickets to get them shipped to our country. Entirely different scenario. And, I think we are right to say, ship them back to the US. in that particular
Last,
scenario. But we should be nationalist.
Last word, Pums. Anything you want to throw in there on this topic?
Yes, that the world is a shitstorm right now.
Oh God! All right,
Shitstorm,
well,
no matter where you look.
let's all get to work. We've got an economy to keep going. It's not going to be the government that does it. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week for more of the Burning Platform. Thanks, Kanthan. Thank you,
Great
Pumi,
show
and
today, guys.
Yeah,
and
thank
Helen,
you.
I still love you.
There we go. All right, everybody.